Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded in Think Twice Radio in the home of the future, also the home of our friend and producer, Richard Wicca. So thank you, Richard and Tom, both. We also thank our friends at Buff State's original alternative radio station, WBNY FM, is Buffalo's original alternative radio station. We're very grateful to people at Buff State and at WBNY for this opportunity to be part of their programming. And when I think of gratefulness, I think about our friends, our Haudenosaunee friends. I think about the land that we're on, stolen from the Haudenosaunee, stolen from the Seneca and the or also, as they call themselves, the Inondawaka people. And so I think about how they are, in spite of all the trickery and violence that took that land from them, they are still kind and really emphasizing gratefulness, starting every event off with a Ganonyo, which is a Thanksgiving address, and even our also people of color, enslaved people who are still, with such a spirit of gratefulness in spite of tremendous oppression that they've experienced, that these are people who know that gratitude is the attitude. So for the indigenous people, they start off by thanking the people who are there, as we have and do, thanking Mother Earth for giving us everything we need for a good life here, for the wonderful plants, medicinal and nutritional plants, all the animals of every kind, and all the different aspects of this world, including the sky world with the sun and the moon, that mean so much to life here on this earth. And then, of course, the Creator, and then all of the love that animates it all. And so then after that, they would say Nyahweh, and the people would say no. So Nyahweh could say no. Thank you. So and our Black friends would say Ashe, is the same. May it be so. So we are thankful, and I am very thankful to our guests for tonight's show. So tonight we're concentrating on Palestinians can't wait. So things have just been continuing to get worse and worse for Palestinians. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And so we have here with us Derek Seidman. Hi, Derek.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
Oh, please. No, we're so glad to have you here. Derek is on the steering committee of Jewish Voice for Peace, Buffalo, which I am also proud to be a member of, and as well as being a journalist, and just a very excellent journalist on lots of topics. So we're just grateful to have you here, Derek. And then we have Russell Brown, our own Russell Brown. I want to say our own because he's been, what can I say? The board chair, past board chair, past chair of the Resist Militarism Task Force, et cetera. And you're also, as the president of the local chapter of Veterans for Peace, Chapter 128. And we're just grateful that you are also on the show, Russell. No, so anyway, we're very glad. So so I want to say back to gratitude is the attitude, and that's our attitude about a lot of things. But I'm going to say some of the way things are going in Israel and Palestine is not one of them. So things have been very, very tough, and so that's why we're having this show to talk about what's happening, update it, and also how people can help and get more involved. So before that, what we'd like to do is start off by talking about what we think of in terms of what values do you think of in terms of our topic for tonight? So values like whether it's compassion or human rights or just whatever values that you think of that you think are important. So we'll just, and true to talking circle, we'll just go around like a talking circle. So Derek, if you want to start.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind for me is justice. I think that we can look at the absolute horrors that are happening in Gaza right now, and it's just when you don't think it can get any more catastrophic, any more horrific, it does. And we can talk about that and get into some detail about what's happening right now. But and we can look over at the West Bank and see the expanding settler violence, dispossession, and I think it's probably safe to say that at this point, this is the darkest hour for Palestinians. I mean, I've read and heard accounts in commentary by Palestinians saying that this is even worse than the Nakba of 1948. But really, it's only the most severe and most recent episode in a long history of injustice or justice denied. Basic justice around having equality and sovereignty and equal rights. Justice in terms of not living under occupation, military occupation, having your humanity recognized, not living under apartheid. So I think that the value that immediately comes to mind is justice and wanting to see justice for Palestinians, not only in terms of an end to the genocide that's happening, but a justice that goes to the core of the conflict that is rooted in their dispossession, occupation, and just wholesale disregard as equal human beings.
Right. Thank you. Yes, justice in every sense of the word, is so needed and so long needed. Russell?
Well, first of all, my first thought was justice too, and I agree with everything that Derek just said. But also, compassion is sort of something that I'm shocked at the lack of compassion that people have for what's going on, because they get to see the whole thing, and it's insane what's going on, and yet I don't see any significant response to it, and I don't know. I think as we're going along, I'll say more, but I'm shocked at what's going on, and I'm shocked at what's not going on here in Buffalo.
Right. So compassion is so important, and so that compassion or lack of compassion, right?
Well,
that we see.
It looks like lack of compassion. If people have it, I'd like to see it. I'd like to see people out doing something. But like in New York City right now, every day, giant demonstrations. All over the city, they're having stuff. And in Buffalo, on Saturday, we have an hour when people get together, and here and there a few things. I think we need to be out there all the time, because it's going to be the end for the Palestinians if we're not. If we can't change what our government's doing, if we can't change the murder and the slaughter and stuff like that.
Right. Well, so important. So that's another thing is you're mentioning of activism. I'd say for a value that the values that I think of. Well, first. Truth and love are almost always the values that I think of. And I certainly think of them in connection with the Palestinians, partly because truth does not necessarily get out. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. People, we have this problem now that, people do not, have a so-called impartial and an agreed upon impartial arbiter of news. And so people have their own so many different sources, and many of those sources are very much not giving the full story or even giving disinformation. So there's misinformation and disinformation of all kinds that are going out. So people don't even necessarily know what's happening. Plus, there's so much happening, including all the chaos and just horrendous tightening of the fascist noose around our neck here in this country, that people don't have a lot of bandwidth to see what else is happening. So that question of truth is very big. And love, I love that Cornel West said, justice is what love looks like in public, so that it really is about loving and caring for people, that compassion, that love and caring that we need to have, that is what will be reflected in justice when justice is done. And as you pointed out, so rightly, Derek, justice delayed is justice denied. And I want to just call out the 100 Years War on Palestine, just a wonderful book by Rashid Khalidi that really spells it out. So it wasn't even just at the beginning it didn't start with the Nakba. It started before that there were efforts, and these efforts that culminated in the Nakba and that now have culminated in where we're at after years of chipping away, getting them sort of back to like our indigenous people here on smaller and smaller and smaller pieces of land that we've started off with the land acknowledgement. So anyway, that's a lot of there are values, the human rights and so many values that we need to see reflected in our country's actions, in our own actions, etc. So anyway, so let's move on to sort of an update to people with what's, sort of a little bit of the history, which I just alluded to some parts of it. And just to bring people up to speed on where things are right now. So Derek, if you as a journalist and as somebody who's been very well versed on this, if you want to just, what are the broad brushstrokes that you would offer to bring people up to speed on this issue and how it is right now? Which some of which you already talked about.
I mean, just to talk about Gaza and leaving aside the West Bank, which is its own horror show,
right?
Gaza has been completely destroyed. 90% of its over 2 million people have been displaced. Well over 60,000 people have been killed. The official numbers is an undercount. It's really a wasteland. The aerial images of which can only be compared to, the parts of the world that saw the most destruction after, during World War II. It's really something that's unparalleled in our lifetime, I think. It's been, described as a genocide by Israel's top human rights organization, B'Tselem, which put out a report last month called it may have been June, recently, last month or two, called Our Genocide.
They call
it was the report was called Our Genocide. It was put out by the top Israeli human rights group. You can go online and read it. It's quite damning.
Right.
And I think most critically, the reason why Gaza's, what's been grabbing the headlines the most is that, there's starvation, there's famine. We know that Israel had announced a multi-month blockade of everything going into Gaza. Hunger and starvation was happening before that, but that's something that really accelerated it. People are dying every day. Children are dying every day from starvation. It's the most cruel, horrific thing you can think of, because it's completely man-made. It's starvation used as a weapon of war by Israel, backed by the U.S. Disease is spreading. Really, it's if you read accounts by medical workers and doctors, the thread between all the accounts that you read is that it's even for people who have been in war zones before, disaster zones, nothing compares to it. And the real critical thing here is, for us being in the U.S., is that this cannot be happening without the support and the diplomatic cover and the arms shipments and aid packages that the U.S. is providing. And I'll stop right now, but maybe after this round we can get a chance to talk about here in New York and here in Western New York,
right.
some campaigns, some organizing, that is focusing on where these levers of responsibility for this genocide are at home.
Right. Thank you, Derek. Thank you very much, Russell.
And one of the things a couple of things bother me. They're talking about people talking about a peace force going to into Gaza. I was wondering what you think about that, Derek, if you don't mind.
No. Happy to talk about that, and thanks for mentioning it, because that was something I should have mentioned that I forgot to mention. So there's been this so-called Gaza humanitarian force that is run by Israel, that is setting up an extremely limited number of aid distribution sites, and by all accounts is essentially using aid as a weapon of war to try to control and concentrate Palestinians in certain areas to facilitate ethnic cleansing. When Palestinians come to these, again, very few aid sites, I think it's 4 that they have to walk miles and miles to. Every day we're hearing accounts of dozens, sometimes hundreds of people being killed, trying to get food, desperate. When I say there's really nothing like it's unparalleled, I really mean it. I mean, it's shocking. Calling it a humanitarian crisis is just a euphemism, because it's not a just passive humanitarian crisis. It is a man-made genocide that's with Israel and the U.S. behind it.
Right. So, Russell, why don't you just add what you'd like to add about your thoughts for what
some of the things that have been bothering me in the past few days is, one is when I meant the peace force, I meant they're thinking some people want to see them send in an armed force to do it, like Macron from France, and several other countries want to send in an armed force, and to me, that's an absolute mistake. It makes no sense, because they're all when they talk about it, they talk about getting rid of Hamas. They don't talk about the real terrorists or the IDF, and they say nothing about that. Everything they do is pointing on controlling the Palestinians, And the other thing is that they're negotiating with Sudan to send people that they're pushing out of Gaza to Sudan. First of all, I think it's crazy that the offenders, South Sudan, excuse me. Yeah, South Sudan. Yeah, and that's what in the news today. And when the problem with that is several things. One is it's crazy that the perpetrators of this are doing the negotiation, deciding where they go, whereas the people that are the victims should be deciding if they want to go someplace or something. But also, South Sudan is suffering, like 7.5 million people are in food insecurity, and 3.5 million kids are undernourished. You know what I mean? So what are you going to send these undernourished Palestinians to an undernourished place? Everything they do about it, every solution they come up with, it drives me crazy. I can't even speak well about it, but I'm sorry about that. But everything I read, I read all the time about it. I stay awake at night reading about it, and yeah. Anyhow.
Well, I want to say, just for people who don't know, and Derek, you may or may not know that Russell just completed a 40-day fast that Veterans for Peace had organized. I actually participated but only for 18 days. When I got sick, I stopped doing it. But the fast was 250 calories a day, and it was to, replicate what's happening to the Palestinians, because that was an average amount of food that people were getting, or that's what they calculated, that people were getting around 250 calories a day.
Well, the people that could get it, that's what they were getting. Yeah.
The people that could get it. And so,
but also they weren't getting, we were getting, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you. We were getting really quality food. We had miso and kale, and we would add it up, and we wouldn't go over 250, but that's not what they're getting in Palestine. So,
right.
In a way,
of course, there are many, many differences. You're sleeping on a comfortable bed. You don't have people bombing you. Nobody's saying it's the same thing, but it was done by Veterans for Peace as an effort to consciousness raise, to work on people's conscience, really, but for people's awareness and for people's caring. And that's actually, he also is getting the Veterans for Peace Gandhi Award for that work. But anyway, so I just want to brag on you just for that minute. I know it's not the same as what they're going through. Nobody's saying it is. However, I just want to also add that there's a lot of work that's going on right now at the UN and by the Code Pink World Court team that's trying to get people to really just to try to get different countries' missions to the UN to band together to get an emergency session, an emergency special session of the General Assembly to actually take action about Israel in the Uniting for Peace resolution, which would allow the General Assembly to bypass the Security Council. Because, as you so rightly said, Derek, the U.S. is not only providing all kinds of arms, which we are to the tune of billions, that we're also serving interference at the UN to stop the UN from doing anything. And the structure of the UN is such that they can make sure that nothing gets done, because the Security Council, where so many decisions get made, is, there's 13 members, a lot of them rotate, but there's veto power, and the U.S. is a permanent member of that Security Council, and the U.S. vetoes it every time there's any kind of a resolution about Israel and Israel's bad behavior, because there was the UN decision that created, that divided the land amongst the Israelis, or I should say, the colonists who were coming, the Jewish colonists who were coming, and the Palestinians, the Palestinians were a mix of Jewish, Christian, and Muslim. But anyway, and the way they split up the land, and then since then, there were the changed borders over the 6 Day War and the chipping away at it that all these settlers have done with violence that is backed up by the Israeli defense, the really Israeli army defense. What do they call it? The IDF, Israeli Defense Force. That's what they call it. So anyway, I just wanted to say that is something that is a big thing that people could do, that we can, especially anybody who has dual citizenship with another country, or friends or family in another country. And actually, I've worked with them on some of that in New York City, where we just try to make whatever kind of connection you can with the people there over, your own connection to the country of however much, whether you have family and friends there, whether you've been there or ever lived there, but to get them to seriously, apply sanctions to Israel for that. In fact, Yemen is really one of the few countries that has ever applied some sanctions or really tried to stop what's going on by doing the bombing of the ships coming through the Red Sea that were destined to supply Israel. So they've done it, and meanwhile, slowly countries are coming around. Norway has now stopped. They've announced that they're going to stop certain things. They're going to stop sending some of the supplies that they have been sending, et cetera. So, so why don't we go around on that a little bit, and including responses to the things that any of us have shared, or other thoughts that you want to share, including about the Israeli bond campaign, the bond campaign, trying to disinvest from the bonds. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's two things that I really want to emphasize that I think are important for people in New York and Western New York to know. So one is that we really need to be focusing on our own federal representative in the House of Representatives, Tim Kennedy. Right now, Jewish Voice for Peace Action, as well as a number of other organizations, are pushing a piece of legislation called H.R. 3565, the Block the Bombs Act. At this point, it's been co-sponsored by close to 36 members of Congress. A lot of them, people you'd expect that have been, supportive on these issues for some time. But there's also some of them that are coming around who are more sort of, haven't supported this type of legislation in the past. In fact, there was one Congresswoman, Valerie Fouché, a congresswoman from North Carolina, who opposed legislation like this. And I should say the legislation would block the U.S. from sending the worst offensive weapons that are going towards the mass killing of Palestinians. And anyways, Representative Fouché was took AIPAC threw $2 million into her last election. She never supported legislation like this, but she's reading the winds now, and she's switched her position. She's signed on as a co-sponsor, and she also said she's not going to be taking AIPAC money during her next election. And it's really the type of thing that we should be seeing from Representative Tim Kennedy. Unfortunately, Kennedy so far has, not co-sponsored this bill. He not only that, I think everybody knows it's been going around a lot that while Palestinians are starving in Gaza, and while he is on his recess and he's supposed to be home talking to his constituents, he was actually at an AIPAC-funded trip to Israel, very recently. And it really should be seen as the scandal that it is. That during a moment like this, when we're really seeing unparalleled horrors in our lifetime that are being perpetrated by Israel with U.S. backing, that our own representative from Western New York, who fashions himself as a progressive, is going on these trips paid for by AIPAC. I think that the tide is turning, the winds are shifting. The Democratic base does not support this, is not standing for this anymore. One of the most recent polls showed that only 8% of Democrats support what Israel's doing in Gaza. So I think that people really need to keep the pressure and the heat up on Kennedy. I think that he's feeling it. I think that people need to be calling, need to be emailing, need to be saying, support HR 3565, Block the Bomb Act. What's going on with this AIPAC trip? Are you serious? He needs to keep hearing it from you. So that's one thing. The other thing I'll say briefly is that Jewish Voice for Peace is, helping to lead a campaign across New York State called Break the Bonds. And the purpose of that campaign is to try to get the New York State Common Retirement Fund, which is the biggest retirement fund of the state, that's controlled and overseen by Comptroller Thomas DiNapoli, to stop investing in these things called Israel bonds. Israel bonds are these highly politicized forms of Israeli debt that DiNapoli has invested over $300 million in. What it basically amounts to is unrestricted loans that our tax money and state workers' retirement funds are giving to Israel to use any way it wants during this moment when it's committing genocide. And so,
how much did you put there?
And so it's really important that if you're a public employee, that you know about this and you speak up. Our state retirement fund should not be investing in what are essentially war bonds right now that are going towards to finance Israel's annihilation campaign against Palestinians. So if you want to find more about that, just Google New York State break the bonds. New York State break the bonds. Just search that. It'll take you right to our campaign page. You can sign our petition. DSA, Western New York Peace Center is also a sponsor of that. There's a lot of groups around the state that have supported it.
Right. Well, thank you. Yes, they are so important. I'm going to say we also support the Break the Bonds Act, and Peace Action New York State, which is a statewide group, is also, and Peace Action National, I should say, is also heavily supporting that. And by the way, I also want to mention the $40,000 that Tim Kennedy has gotten from AIPAC, and I don't imagine that includes the cost of his little junket down to Israel right now. Should be meeting with us. But anyway, so thank you for bringing those up. Those are big. Those are very big. And I know you've especially worked very hard on that Break the Bonds. And it is so important because it's just a travesty that that our public monies are being used to encourage more war. And beside the fact of all the laws, the international laws that we're breaking, and then our own laws, the U.S. laws that are being broken by the funding of all these weapons that don't belong going over there anyway. So, Russell, you have a reaction or anything to add to those two things about both our representatives and the Break the Bonds, the Act and the representatives, or to the Israeli bond campaign and the disinvestment campaign about Israeli bonds?
Well, it's obvious. It makes sense that we should put some effort into that Break the Bonds thing. I think that's a good idea, that we shouldn't be sending our money to that. But I think there's a whole lot more. And I don't have the optimism about dealing with people like Kennedy or Schumer. They seem totally unresponsive to anything we've ever done in the past. Well, Tim Kennedy's kind of new, but Schumer and Gillibrand, they're all Schumer brags that he's a Zionist. All these people are bringing it. Well, there's no hope if it's like that. I think of it like in the South, when people were born hating African Americans, you know what I mean? And they got the whole thing all the time. Over there in Israel, they get the same thing. Because when I was on the street in New York City, this woman comes up to me, and this happens all the time. And she said, the Palestinian babies are born wanting to kill Israelis. I mean, that's ridiculous. But I don't think she was saying it as rhetoric. I think she absolutely believed it by the way she presented it. And all this stuff, constantly stuff coming from those people that, we just need to take a strong, we need to stop sending the money. The thing is, we got to completely stop supporting Israel. You know what I mean? That's what we have to do completely. And,
right.
Also, just another whole aspect of it, though, is that what I'm thinking about the soldiers over there. I met some in New York City, but the soldiers over there, they're starting to commit suicide and refusing to go. And they're going to have what we had with people from Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. It's going to be even worse because they just sitting there shooting babies in the face and blowing them up and starving them. And it's all on camera. We've seen everything. And the whole community knows it. And they were bragging about it. You know what I mean? So it's gonna come back at Israel, all those people that have done those horrible things. And but it's part of what they were raised to do. You know? Think of that. Remember Brian Wilson? He always had that thing. We are not more than them; they are not less than us. And that's a lesson that Israel has to learn about the Palestinians.
Right. Now, I know you have to leave pretty soon, Derek, so I'd rather hand it over to you for whatever time you have still left to give us, if any, or any final thoughts that you want to share before when you do have to get off.
Yeah, I do have to actually hop off now, but I guess I would just want to say, thanks again for inviting me to talk about the situation, what JVP is doing. I think that local independent media like this is so important, and so I appreciate what you're doing. And I, it's really easy to despair. I feel it all the time. I feel it every day. It feels like we're up against this Goliath that we can't figure out how to move, and it's infuriating and frustrating and depressing to be having been consumed with trying to stop this genocide for almost 2 years now, and feeling like you're getting nowhere. But two things I'll say is that I get so much solace in being in solidarity with others and working with others together in community to try to change things. And also, it's while this is, there's limits in how much we can, say this is helping, for people on the ground that are enduring unbelievable suffering. I do think that we are seeing a seismic shift around the world, in the U.S. I think things are really changing, and I think we're living through a before and after moment in terms of the previous sort of consensus. I put that in quotes because it wasn't going to be consensus for everybody, but the consensus that existed around sort of blind support for Israel in U.S. politics, in the Israeli state, in its actions and its occupation. So I think that our movement is having an impact, and even if we don't see it day to day, when we look back 10 or 20 years later, we'll see it.
I just want to.
I have to take off now. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Derek. I appreciate what you had to say. Thank you.
And just before you go, I want to say we are totally committed 100% at the Western New York Peace Center to see, and ally with you in all of these movement and all of the different actions that we're trying to do. And I do see change, and I see it even in Zionists, that people are just, it's so bad, and it's so clear that more and more, we just it's a race against time. And that's why on that note about time, we'll let you go, but only with our love and our thanks and our gratitude for, and our solidarity, total solidarity. So
thank you.
Thank you so much, Bye. Derek. To be continued. Okay, take care. So that is what, now it's just you and me, Russell. So I think you really did such a great job of just trying to be the change and suffering that you took on yourself to try to make this change by doing all the 40 days, spending those 40 days in New York City, vigiling every day as you did, it's no wonder that you did get that award, because you really
The award
deserve
had
it.
nothing to do with that. It had nothing to do with that. So, because there was several other people that did the same thing. There were many other people that were there the whole time
There
too.
were not many people who managed to do all 40 days. That's what I
Yeah.
have heard.
Yeah.
So
Well, there were several.
there were a few. So that's good. But and I'm sure that it helped. And I know that people, when I was doing it for the 18 days I was doing it, people were very impressed, because that's a level of commitment that really says something. When you're curtailing your food, and by that much, that really says a lot.
Well, one of the things I thought that was positive about it is, and people have told me that, is our being there brought a lot of other groups together that haven't been together for years on the issue, working together. And so, and so that was a good effect of us being there. And now they're there all the time. You can watch the video every day. There's a whole bunch of people there doing stuff, and some of the stuff, you might support and some you might not support. Like they painted the whole front of the New York Times red, and the sidewalk in front of it. They were outraged at the way they're covering the thing. And then last night, over 100 people were at the New York Times protesting their coverage, not doing anything except being there and with signs and stuff. But they're all over the city. They're not just in one place. They're all over the city. There's demonstrations. They go to the editor's apartment of the New York Times. They go to these people's apartment. They go to all the missions. Every day there's places to go where there's people demonstrating.
Sure. Right. Well, and especially in front of the UN or the Israeli embassy. I know that's one of them. And like you said, the newspapers. Now, what did you say where there was 100 people just the other day? I missed. I didn't hear it.
Yesterday, 100 people were demonstrating at the New York Times for the way their coverage. They were protesting. Just yesterday. That's Democracy Now!
Have not done a fair job of reporting. Because
it's not a fair job. It's more than not a fair job. They misrepresenting it and letting all those nasty stuff go. They put a lighter tone on it. There was a disturbance. Well, they killed a bunch of people, but there was a disturbance or something. That kind of a thing. It doesn't really cover what's really going on.
Right. Well, I can say that I felt very good. In fact, I met with Rob Jareski just today because he happened to be coming through Buffalo. So I did get a chance to talk to him, and I know he's working very hard on trying to get this United for Peace resolution to have the General Assembly meet in an emergency session and to pass a Uniting for Peace resolution that would include actual hard actions in terms of Israel. So,
hard action by the UN, you mean?
And suspending Israel from the UN or things like that.
Right.
I know even the idea. Now, it was interesting. You brought it up, and Derek, I think, took it in a different way. He was thinking about the
right.
What do they call it? The Palestinian Solidarity Fund or whatever they called it, where they were supposedly giving people food, but then they end up mowing them down, is the way I understood it. But also, there's been some talk of sending some kind of a force, a multinational force.
Right, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that might be what you were talking about. But I understood that as something to really protect the Palestinians from the Israelis. Not so much so it's more.
If you read the quotes from Macron, for example, he was talking about we have to
from who?
Get Macron, the head of I don't know how you pronounce his name, but France.
Oh, Macron. Yeah, the
Macron,
French.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And he said he said the whole purpose of it is to act for the security of Israel. That's a quote from him, for the security of Israel. and they want to round up the Hamas and put them out of business and put in some kind of government that they want. It's none of their business. Hamas was elected, whether you like them or not, by the people. And who is the West? You know, if they put a military force to force their wishes on the Palestinian people, it's just I don't know. It bothers me a whole lot. You know what I mean? If there was
Sure.
But
Well, and I think a lot of times it's just about violence begets violence. So, you know, it doesn't matter who's doing the shooting. When people are getting killed, you know, more people are getting killed. So
right. And it doesn't matter though who's doing it to some extent. I mean, because the IDF is the major terrorist force right now. It's the terrorist force there, and but they're talking about going after Hamas.
Well, but now sometimes people say they're talking about that because they're trying to make it sound good for the people they're trying to convince. I don't know, but one thing I do know is that if we think about what happened with the, you know, the international effort to end apartheid in South Africa, that happened very slowly over the years as country after country started to sanction them. And so that might be what happens here. And if there was a UN Uniting for Peace resolution that encouraged and called for countries, I should say, to boycott Israel, to sanction Israel, to stop supplying them with things or stop trading with them, that when enough countries, when we reach a tipping point, that could be the thing that's going to make the change. Although it's a race against time because of everything we were saying that's going on. So that's really where the rub comes. You know, otherwise it might be a good plan, but we need expedited action, and that's what's difficult. And you know, but I think one of the things is to sort of see what we can do, and if one of the things is calling Kennedy, and it may seem like it makes no difference to him, you know, with his $40,000 in his trip. However, I'm going to say this is something else we talked about. He has been right on a lot of domestic issues. So he's been terrible on this issue. But if he just was more consistent so that the things that he stands up for on the domestic issues, if he would stand up for them in the case of the Palestinians and international issues. So if enough people, if he thinks he's not going to get reelected over this, then we'll see a change in attitude, is what I think.
It's a shame he can't come to that because he sees yesterday 123 people were killed. You know, so many. There's more children that have lost their limbs than ever before anywhere else in recent history. You know, all that stuff. You know, you shouldn't be worried about getting reelected. Why doesn't he care about? Why doesn't he care about the slaughter that's going on? That's what I have a difficult time understanding. You know.
Right. No, I'm right with you. Absolutely. There's no question that it's hard to understand how people are functioning in such. That's why I said, you know, people who love Israel, people who want to live there or have lived there are coming around and saying, we can't keep this up. Lots of Israelis are not in favor, are protesting every day. Also because the hostages. So people are like, wow, you know, they're so worried about the hostages. Well, Netanyahu isn't, or he would do things differently. First of all, when they're all starving, they have no food to give the hostages. They have no water to give the hostages when they don't have them themselves. So there's a lot that needs to be done differently. There's no question. And we can just encourage every kind of
I agree.
Action,
Whatever you can do, do it.
small and large, small or large, right. Together with people or on your own, or just talking to other people, calling and calling and calling. And I know I've heard, we've talked about this before, where you don't have very much faith in that. I don't say I have very much faith in it either. I just feel like it's one thing we can do. That's a pretty low bar. It's very easy to do, to just call every couple days, or just keep calling, or emailing or whatever to Kennedy's, Gillibrand's, and Schumer's offices, to just tell them how much we need them to support the Block the Bombs Act. We need a Senate version of the Block the Bombs Act too, is the other thing. So before that needs to happen, before that'll really be effective, unless they actually did it. But I don't have a lot of hope with them, because Schumer and Gillibrand have been on the wrong side of this issue, consistently wrong side of this issue every time. But in the meanwhile, so we can gather, we can educate, we can, persist, we can try to support people who are there. Friends of Sabeel is a great organization. People can even go to the West Bank. They still can go to the West Bank. I don't know that they could. I don't think that they could get to Gaza, and nor, as people have pointed out to me, it wouldn't necessarily be a big help to go to Gaza, because then you're just one more person to feed on the without food or water there. So,
well, they've offered to. They've asked for Western journalists to come, and the next day they killed that famous journalist and the 4 other Al Jazeera people. I mean, there's no respect in anything. It's a nasty country occupied by most of the nasty people are in control. Similar things happening here.
Well, we can just do what we can do. I'm going to say that, one thing that you might want to restart. We have the Resist Militarism Task Force. The Western New York Peace Center used to have an ISPAL task force that was just on Israel and Palestine at one point. And we had a woman come who was refusing, who wrote "Refusing to be Enemies." We had the general's son, what's his name again? Came.
Yeah, I know who you mean.
And the Rachel Corrie's parents come. So there was quite a bit of activity, and we did take a lot of heat for it. And we've been having quite a lot of activity now without a task force to pin it on or to manage it, but we've been managing it just through the central office there. And we've been collaborating with here, I can't see you. Here you are. We've been collaborating with Jewish Voice for Peace, all consistently, with MPAC as well, Muslim Public Affairs Council, and the Christian Peace Coalition also. We've done lots of radio shows. So those things by themselves are not getting the job done, but they're helping with the other things. They're helping to move the needle, because the conversation has been changing. The amount of support has been changing. So I feel like, maybe, it's picking up steam, and maybe things really will change. Maybe if the UN General Assembly does get behind doing a Uniting for Peace resolution, that might make the difference. So we can try and do that. Try as hard as we can. But, so Russell, what are your thoughts of other things that people might do? Join us at Women in Black, Gaza on Main, and Women in Black. Actually, that has now started to be from 11 o'clock. The Gaza on Main crew comes at 11 o'clock. So from 11 to 1 o'clock on Saturdays at Bidwell and Elmwood, there are signs, there are people there, and really chanting, vigiling, and educating people about what's going on in Gaza and in Palestine, and what the settlers are doing on the West Bank is very much something that is being emphasized too. That it's just one of the things that is, when people say, well, what when Palestinians have tried peaceful solutions, peaceful attempts to change, to get some justice, to talk, at least have communicate on the issue and try to get some progress, those attempts have fallen on deaf ears. Those attempts have not been very fruitful. So we just have to try harder in more different ways, and especially on the levers of power that we can reach. So any more thoughts? What would you like to leave people with, Russell?
I think we should start doing stuff like go to the State Department every day and spend a couple hours in front of the State Department. That's a direct connection to our decision making in Washington, and they're over there at 111 Genesee. So I'd love to see people there every morning, more so than Bidwell. I mean, if everybody was over there, they would really it would cause some stress for the federal government. That's what I think.
Passport office, right? You're talking about the passport office.
Well, it's also our particular part of the State Department in Buffalo.
Well, it's our only representation of the State Department here in Buffalo. So that's a good
that's what I'm saying. Well, I can't think of other places. It doesn't make any sense. Well, I don't want to say that. People should go to Schumer's if they feel it's positive, but the guy doesn't listen to us. You don't even get to talk to him. If you get to talk to maybe one of his person who is completely disinterested, et cetera, et cetera. That's a. I don't know. I don't want to be negative about it either. If somebody goes and does that, I'm happy when I drive by and I see 6 people in front of Schumer's office. That's kind of nice with signs wherever I go. But they should be everywhere,
Right.
And they should be in. They should be in his office.
Right.
Go ahead.
So Russell, I just want to say, thank you for all that you've done, all that you're doing. We'll just persist. We have to persist, but you've done a lot, and God knows that, we never know when we're going to get to that tipping point. So we're not there yet, but we'll just keep right on. So thank you for so much for all the work that you've put into it. We thank Derek for coming to this, for all the work that he's been doing, all the reporting that he's been doing, actually on other key subjects as well as ICE was talking about. So we have a lot of issues to work on, but luckily we're all working together, and we're going to get there. It just takes the time it takes. So
a thing I just found out.
Here. Russell, we're just ending. So
okay.
Thank you. So we'll save that for the next issue. But I just want to say I'm so grateful for you and him. This is Talking Peace, and together we've been talking peace in truth and love. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So what were you going to say?
What?
What were you going to say?
No, that's okay. It's a different topic. I just found out about the biggest industry in Lockport they make nerve gas. It's the biggest industry in Lockport, and it's the only company in the United States that makes nerve gas, and they're right in Lockport. For example, I just found that out yesterday. Anyhow, never mind. I got to go.
And it makes me think of. I was thinking that we need to go back to some of these arms manufacturers. So you're right on target with that. So talk to Tom Casey, and more to follow. For anybody who's still watching, if we're still on the stream, I would just say, we're grateful. We'll keep right on working, and we're going to get there. So thank you so much. Thanks, Russell. Appreciate you. Take care. Thanks for coming. Thanks for all you do. To be continued.
Bye.
Okay, bye.